Hello guys, this is Disposal Cannings back for yet another video, and in this one we'll be going over AFL ladder predictions for 2021. Now, I know I've done it before. In fact, that was my first ever video, so make sure you guys check it out. But a lot's changed since then. We've had the draft and the trade period, and I want to make amendments to my predictions so you guys aren't misled. So without further ado, let's get into the video. So nothing has changed at 18th. North Melbourne still sit dead last at the bottom of my ladder. Now, I do have a separate video on this, so make sure you go check it out. Whether or not North Melbourne will win the wooden spoon, I reckon they will, just a spoiler. But the main reasons are that they delisted so many players, they brought in a new coach, and they've brought a few players off season, and they're a young group, all of which do not help them get any further than 18th in my books. So some of you guys might have different opinions, that's fine. Just really depends on what you think. Next, 17th is Allied Crows. Now, I have really high expectations for Allied Crows this year. I reckon they could go all the way up to 16th if they play well, but I reckon they can't go past 16th. I won't be surprised if they do, but I just don't reckon that's going to be possible because of their young playing list. They've had a few problems with drugs. I mean, Tyson Stengel has been laid off from all duties, and Brad Crouch was caught with drugs with him, so they might have a little bit of culture issues. I'm not 100% sure about that. If you guys want to do some more investigating, you can do that yourselves. But I just reckon the loss of Brad Crouch, more young players coming in, will see them become one of the worst teams in the competition this year. Just like last year, I don't reckon they're gonna I reckon they're gonna beat Adelaide, but that's the only team they're gonna beat. Next is Hawthorn. Hawthorn does have some serious issues next year. Lots of their old players retired or left, aka James Frawley. I mean, they are receiving Carl Hardigan to counter that, but I reckon they're still going into negatives, especially with James Sicily will be out for most of the year, and so will Jack Gunston miss the opening of next year as well. I mean, Denver Granger Barris will definitely help with replacing those players, and he should play most of every single game. That will be a positive this year, but apart from that, nothing much to look forward for Hawks fans. Next one is Giants. Now, in my last video I had Giants higher, but I just reckon they're going to slump even more. They did manage to keep Xavier O'Halloran, which is a very big positive for them. But regarding that, I just reckon after lots of deep thought and reflection, I reckon they're going to definitely go to the bottom of the ladder. It's the beginning of the end for the Giants, I reckon. They didn't do well last season. I reckon they're going to get even worse this season because of due to toxic culture. That's the main reason, I reckon, because I know you guys might not value a great culture as one of the things that might lead to success, but I reckon it would make a big difference in the lives of the Giants players, and I reckon that's why so many left, was due to the toxic culture of the club. At 14th, they're the Swans. The Swans are in rebuilding mode, and with Braden Campbell and Logan McDonald being picked up, pick number 4 and 5, it is clearly evident. I reckon their draftees and their younger players will continue to play lots of the game time, which is why they are 14th. I reckon it is the right thing to do as well. Every team can't be at the top 8. That's just something you have to remember. I reckon in the future, the Swans will be one of those top 8 contenders, maybe even in 2 or 3 years. At 13th, we've got Collingwood. Just like the Giants, they may have some toxic cultures. And yeah, with the big debacle over Treloar, terrible handling by their manager. I think his name is Ned Guy. I just reckon there might be some falling out with some of the players. I've heard Adam Treloar isn't the most popular person among Collingwood, but if I was a player, I would start being worried over the debacle. As well as that, Jane Stevenson and and Tom Phillips also will hurt them. So I just reckon with the toxic culture and loss of stars, they will start to go on the decline, just like the Giants. It's the beginning of end for them. Next up, we got Essendon. Now, I think Essendon has climbed higher since my last ladder predictions video, which is good for them. They had picks 10, 9, and 8, which they picked up Nick Cox, Zach Reed, and Archie Perkins. They're all great talents that they should be able to use, and they should get some game time. They've also picked up Jai Caldwell as well. It is disappointing how they did not get Dunkley, but I reckon they can move past that, and I reckon they can compete in some games. I reckon inconsistency is going to be their problem. And that, as well as that, they do have a young squad. They don't have a young squad, but they do have a pretty young squad. So I reckon inconsistency will definitely hurt them. At 11th, we've got the Suns. Now, the Suns are a great team. I just reckon they need to wait till Noel Anderson and Matt Rowell do develop, as well as Isaac Rankin. I think it's Ben King. If those types of players develop, they will become a powerhouse in 4 or 5 years' time. But until then, expect them to finish just outside the top 8 or just inside the top 8. I reckon they're going to finish 11th this year. It's pretty low for them. I can definitely see them ranking high, but I just think the teams above them will definitely finish high, which is why I've got them down here at 11th. At 10th, we've got the Carlton Blues. Now, Carlton is another young squad that is developing. They're starting to mature. Patrick Cripps isn't being relied on as much, which is a great thing for them. Because even though Patrick Cripps is such a great player, AFL is a 18-man sport, not a one-man sport. It is unlike other sports like basketball and cricket, where practically one man can carry you. You really need a whole team effort, and that's what they're starting to do, which is why they're developing up the ladder. They did finish around this area last year. I reckon it is going to take a couple of years before they do break into the top 8. Lots of people have been raving about Carlton, about how good they're going to become. I don't have that high expectations for them personally. It just depends on who you are, what your thoughts are, and what you know. At 9th, I've got Melbourne. So, Melbourne Demons, I had them in the top 8 last year, but with nothing much really happening in the trade period, no really major trades. I mean, they did get Ben Brown, but apart from that, no major draft picks either, so their squad is practically the same. They did narrowly miss out. I reckon they do have a finals teams. They just need to improve their consistency. I just reckon there are other teams better than Melbourne. That's dead straight honest. That's why I've got them 9th. They are a top 8 team, but I reckon next year there will be some very good teams and some very bad teams. At 8th, I've got the Fremantle Dockers. Now, here I think players like Brayshaw and Chera will start to get their breakout season. Nat Fyfe can push forward, as well as Michael Walters, and they can start having a bigger forward presence and contributing to the goals. Taberner will improve. The departure of Hogan may help the culture of the club. I reckon they have a really, really good culture with Hogan, and removing him will probably help their culture a lot. So at 8th, I place them so high because I reckon they're gonna have a breakout year this year, and this is the year people are gonna start seriously considering them as finals. At 7th, I've got the Bulldogs. Now, they've moved up my rankings mainly due to the addition of Adam Treloar and number 1 pick, Jamara Ugle-Hagan. Jamara Ugle-Hagan should help their goal-kicking woes, and Adam Treloar should help their midfield. However, they are great. They could potentially be top 4, I reckon, but I've got them down to 7th due to inconsistency. When they won that final, when they won the Premiership in 2016, they just had a good streak, but apart from that, they haven't really been a powerhouse. So I reckon this is the time that they start doing it. Moving on, at 6th, we got West Coast Eagles. Now, West Coast Eagles can definitely finish higher than that. I just reckon there are going to be better teams out there. They are aging. Tim Kelly needs to improve, I reckon. I know he did really well last year, but he just needs to improve because the other Eagles midfielders are starting to get injured and old. And even though Tim Kelly was a mature age draft pick, he still needs to start carrying their team a little more than he did last year. At 5th place, I've got the Geelong Cats. Nothing against Geelong. I know they added Jeremy Cameron. Many people think they're going to do really, really well next year due to the addition of Jeremy Cameron. But I just reckon they've lost some very good players in Jack Stephen and Gary Ablett. I know they were old, but they were still contributing to the team, and they still did probably win them some games last year. As well as that, Gary Ablett will probably would have had some say in the 2020 season, like on how things are run. His experience would be great for the young guys, and just losing him will be a big impact on them. I just reckon the way Tom Hawkins functioned last year was so good, and I reckon Jeremy Cameron might disrupt that. That's what a lot of people may forget about Geelong, is that they had a strategy called Hawkins Island, in which they would isolate Hawkins. I mean, they can still do this, but a player like Jeremy Cameron probably won't want to take back seats. So we'll just have to see where Geelong do well. I reckon they can finish top 4. It just depends how well they do utilise their forward line. At 4th place, we have got St Kilda. Now, St Kilda can go massive. I've got them higher than most people would. I reckon what they've done in the off-season is perfect. They've fixed the one thing that they do need in midfielders. I mean, their midfield was one really, really bad last season for a good team. Most teams boast powerhouse midfielders. For example, Richmond had Dusty, and Geelong had Dangerfield, Duncan, Menegola. They were all powerhouse midfielders, while St Kilda had Jack Steele to carry them all. And the addition of Brad Crouch should help this, even though he is banned for the first 2 weeks, I reckon. I think it is 2 weeks. It might be more. It's definitely not less than 2 weeks. It might be up to 4 weeks. But I reckon they can still play really, really well without Brad Crouch, as you saw last year. So I reckon St Kilda have what it takes to go all the way. At 3rd place, we've got Brisbane Lions. Now, previously I said Brisbane Lions would finish first, but there is a problem with that. Since then, I have re-evaluated how much I value things, and goal kicking and accuracy has gone way up. They did add Joe Danaher, but Joe Danaher is not known for his accuracy. In fact, he's pretty bad when shooting at goals, so that won't help them at all in that regard. I also reckon they can do a lot better than 3rd, but if they don't improve their goal kicking, I reckon they can't go higher than 3rd, because they will have some matches where they completely flunk out and lose, which is why I've got them down here at 3rd. So 2nd is Power. I reckon Power is a very strong team, and once again, they'll finish high on the ladder. I'm not sure about their final success. They have had a history of being very bad in the finals, but I reckon in the regular season, they are very good, and they are powerhouses. So they will stay up there at the top of the ladder like they did last season. At first, I've got Richmond Tigers. Now, after 3 wins in 4 years, people may be thinking it's time that they start declining. However, Richmond have started to start replacing their old players. For example, the addition of Tom Lynch to start replacing Jack Riewoldt. I know Jack Riewoldt isn't the best, or isn't. I know Jack Riewoldt isn't declining, but he also isn't at his best. So he will still contribute to the team, but Tom Lynch is starting to carry the team in terms of goal kicking a lot more. They've also started to roll out their older players. Like, for example, Shai Bolton came through the midfield last year, and Bolter practically replaced Alex Rance in their backline. So these are just 3 examples of younger players replacing the older players. And if they can keep doing this, they can remain a powerhouse for years to come. And that is what I've loved about Richmond during these 4 years, is that they haven't just kept the same list growing old. They've started to replenish it with new players, which is so good. If you guys want, check out my video on Richmond, whether or not they will win their 4th flag in 5 years. So make sure you check that one out. Anyway guys, thanks for listening. Please like and subscribe.